Sometimes it's okay if you've only got a small one. Yes, I've got a small one. It's a Bogasing M5. They did send it to me for nothing, and I said, thank you very much. They sent me, or did they send me? No, I think I bought the Bogasing. Yes, I definitely bought the Bogasing M4. Quite like that for the money. Nice bassy sound, but yes, bit of distortion. Then they sent me the Bogasing M10. And yes, if you're going outside and you just want a very loud sound, not very loud, but relatively for its size, that was okay. But for me, not enough of anything other than the highs. They sent me the Bogasing M5, the M5. And where does it sit? Clue, clue, clue. Sits on this table. Yes, I know, don't get silly this early. It sits in that smallish, £50-ish, $50 mark, say 40 to about $55 pounds. These three are the usual suspects, my favourites for recommending in this size and this price. Do you know what I did? I took the grill off. So when you get it, it won't look like that. It'll look like that. And it'll look like that from both sides. This is a 360-degree speaker. How do I know? Well, it sits on the box. And also, I took the grill off to show you. We have a single 4-range driver and a passive radiator on the front, the back, the front, the back. It's exactly the same whichever way you do it. Not on the side, obviously, front and back. There's no real front and back. There's literally nothing to tell you what's front and what's back. So it's for you to decide. What I did was I decided the right speaker was the front. Why? Because it seems to tie up with the lettering and the wording on the bottom. Here's the first thing that struck me. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, wow, that looks like a Marshall Middleton, but much smaller, or the Marshall Emberton and slightly smaller. It's different because driver right side, you turn it around, driver's on the left side. But do you know what that means? It means whichever side you are listening on, for instance, I'm calling that the front side, right side driver, the left side is also on the left. And that's the difference between when you're thinking, oh, it's a Marshall knockoff. One difference is, with the Marshall, you're listening on axis. Obviously, this is 360. It's not really about listening on axis. It's about all-round sound. And I will tell you, it's quite a consistent sound all-round, including from the sides. So that's a good thing about this speaker. But you're missing out a little trick in having some semblance of left and right. So obviously now you've got the left and the right absolutely opposite each other. But if that had been off-centered to the left, as you're looking at it, you would get a little bit more separation. I'm not saying it's going to be sound left and right, but this is what Marshall do. And that's the difference in this speaker. Personally, I would have liked more of a knockoff. So you get a little bit of that trick of having left and right, even though you're not on axis. But the difference is now you know which is left and right, because when you turn it around, it's clearly on the left, and with the Marshall Middleton, the driver's always on the same side. I don't know if you're following that. What I'm basically saying is that's fine for having a consistent sound all round. You're just missing a trick in that the left side is now muddled with the right side, whereas it would have been better, in my opinion. What do I know? I'm just a reviewer. On the other side, it's some semblance, as Marshall do. Well, we say Marshall. Who are they really? Sound Industries. And by the way, Sound Industries have now bought out Marshall. Me telling you all the time, it's not really Marshall. Well, now apparently it's the same company, sort of, if you know what I mean. One company has bought the other. So that's the speaker. They claim 40 watts, but I did say, well, first of all, they claim 40 watts. That seems to be because they say 220-watt drivers. It kind of looks like they're saying, rating the drivers, because there's no RMS or anything. Just to know, let you know, as I always say, there's things these days, such as battery life, which is ridiculous spec. Let's ignore it. Let's go by battery capacity. There are good things, even before we get into the sound, that you're going to like about it. How do I know? It's because I know each and every one of you, because you always say hello to me. Oh, there's an auxiliary in. Woohoo! We like that, Al. Good. Tick number 1. There is a TF slot, a micro SD card. You can play music straight off the device itself. That's great. That's something the big brands never, ever give us. Why? Maybe because they can get away with not giving it to you. Not only that, there's a USB-A out in. There's a USB-A in. You can use a USB dongle to play your music off. Even better. And of course, USB-C charging. They've got 3 sound modes. The default mode, it lights up blue, and that's called 3D mode. It's quite a marketing term now, isn't it, to say we got spatial audio and claim all sorts of naughty things about it. I have to say, they've been calling 3D mode. A lot of these smaller, unknown companies with the cheaper speakers have been doing things like 3D mode for a long, long time. Is it 3D? Well, it's not going to sound like it's coming from behind you, is it? Just get real, but they call it 3D mode. The next one, if you press this button here, it will go orange. That is vocal mode. Problem with vocal mode is, if you was actually EQing for vocals, it would be individually on every track. Vocals, all our vocals occupy different parts of the frequency response. Yes, within a sort of narrowish band, but it's not that narrow, and that's the problem. You can't, well, I'm going to say it right off the bat, even as an idiot that I am, you cannot make one EQ to bring out vocals because every track is different. I mean, any mixer, I'm pretty sure, will tell you that. However, you might say, well, just pushing the highs would bring more clarity. Yes, but let's see what happens down the road, whether it's already bright in default. And the other mode is, it goes green, and what's that? That's their bass mode. A bit weird. A lot of us will probably say, well, as long as it's not boomy bass. Well, apparently I like boom bass, but I don't. I like deep bass. But you may be thinking, put it that far down because, you know, it's just going to be boomy. But for a lot of us, we like a bass-heavy sound, and to have it as the third. Oh, by the way, I'm saying it's the third one down, which is a bit weird because probably you choose that over vocal. But anyway, when I turn the speaker on and off, the good thing is whatever you've chosen, it will remember that EQ. If I turn that off now, we want that to come back on green. It's come back on green. So it remembers the setting. So that's the basic overview of the speaker. I'm comparing it against the Soundcore Boost, my favorite for a bass-heavy sound, that size, that price. The purists among you, probably self-acclaimed audiophiles among you, will like the classic Tribit Maxsound Plus. This is version 2 for its neutralish, it's still on the bright side, neutralish, more pure sounding tone. I prefer bass-heavy, but this is still a great speaker, a classic with some bass. It's not completely devoid of bass. Maxsound Plus, and what I consider in the middle. It's got more bass than the Maxsound Plus, but less than the Boost. It's clearer than the Boost, but not as clear as the Maxsound Plus. So it sits in the middle like that. The difference is it's a mono speaker because it's got a tweeter. This is basically their version of the Flip 6, isn't it? It's got a tweeter and a woofer. It's not a full-range woofer. It wouldn't be a woofer. It's got a woofer and a tweeter, and it's the only one that's got some lights. They're the ones I'm going to compare it to. That should give you a good handle on this speaker. But the first thing we're going to do is what we're going to do now, the frequency response measurements. Default mode, they call 3D mode. Note the big difference from going the lower volume is 40%, and then when you've hit 60%, the volume steps much closer together. In other words, less change for the same percentage step. We do have bass adjustment at lower volumes, and at 40%, we're on the rise from 1 kHz and up. It's clearly a bright speaker. We do have a dip in the upper bass, but the thing of most note here is the big dip, 5 kHz, 4.5 kHz to 5.5 kHz. That's a considerable dip. There's no crossover. It's a full-range driver, and this is with just a single, the right channel active. As you got the volume steps, 50% and above, you've lost your bass adjustment, but you have an even steeper rise now. It's rising all the way from, say, 200 Hz up, so it's becoming thinner and brighter. Vocal mode, we're trading some mid-bass for some upper bass, dips in lower mids, where it's a bit more level on 3D mode, but overall, not a huge amount of difference, just some tinkering. In bass mode, we certainly have more bass now, but we also get a big roll-off at the high end. From 3 kHz, it's rolling off. We overlay them, 60% volume, where it's already becoming a brighter sounding speaker. You can see in the bass mode is a huge increase in bass, but it's also a huge decrease in any extended highs. And the difference between 3D mode and vocal mode is a little bit less in the mid bass, quite a bit more around the 200 Hz mark, upper bass, bit of a dip, 650 Hz, and a bit more, 3 kHz to 9 kHz. So a bit of tinkering, but whether you could call that a vocal mode is another matter. Here we can see the left channel versus the right channel. I'm showing this because there is a difference in the high end. The right, which I'm calling the front on of the speaker, in the red, is clearly brighter than the left channel, which is the rear firing driver. 3D mode is clearly a bright, it's about, you know, in-room response would be a downward slope. These are frequency response, quasi-anechoic measurements, so you'd want a flat line. But this is an upward slope, which means it's a bright sounding speaker. No secret there. I'm talking about obviously 3D mode and lots of bass adjustment at low volume. You can see that because the bass curve relative to the rest of the response is quite high, and then relative to the mids and highs, the bass is not so significant. We know that's going to be bass light, and you know that's the problem with these sort of speakers. It's not like hi-fi where you get a consistent sound. These speakers do change a lot at each volume step. Vocals don't seem to make. I've already said. I mean, I think that's personally I would chuck the vocal mode. You cannot EQ. You cannot set. You can do a dynamic EQ for vocals. You can't set one. You can't mess with the frequency response and hope to improve vocals in every track. It will be different in every track. So, okay, they've done that. It gives you an alternative EQ, but I think that could have been better used for some other tuning. Bass mode, well, it's the opposite of what we were saying about low volume bass adjustment. The relative highs are missing. It's rolled off. So that's you've got more bass, but it looks like you're not going to have much clarity. And the other thing is, I've got mismatched drivers. Have I? I don't know. They call it 3D mode. Of course, if it's truly trying to do 3D mode, some sort of spatial audio, some sort of pseudo surround, it will have some processing going on. And in frequency response measurements, that always makes it look off. They may have deliberately got one side brighter than the other. I don't know, other than to say one side on my speaker is brighter. It's brighter on what I call the front or the right channel. You've got the option then turning it around if it's a little bit too bright when you're on axis listening from the other side. Is it significant? I'll actually let you listen. Left on my speaker, left channel versus, remember, they all differ a little bit. Every time any of us reviewers, and I don't really call myself a reviewer, I'm a bloke giving you an opinion, but anytime anyone says this is how it sounds, everybody's speaker at this level where there's a lot of variation, it's going to sound a little bit different. You've got to take that into account. But on my speaker, this is the difference between left and right. There is a difference, and the other thing is, obviously, it's got different modes. Let's listen to each of those modes.
You never said
big problem all these modes have is inherent on my speaker, is that the fact we've got this 5 kilohertz dip, 4.5 kilohertz to 5.5 kilohertz. I mean, it's gone. There is a bump, and depending on the mode where that boost in the highs is that to counter that, or is that deliberate tuning again? I don't know. One thing I can tell you is it ain't the crossover. A, it's 5.5 kilohertz, and B, we've just got full range drivers, so there is no crossover. Bass mode, as we alluded to, I mean, it's quite, yes, you get more bass, but it's muddy. I mean, there's no two ways about it. That's muddy. I'm not sure who would use that, other than if you're in somewhere like your bathroom. It may work where the highs are going to be enhanced, and you're going to counter that. But in a normal environment, that's going to be muddy. It's going to be well muddy outdoors. The vocals, I already said, in my opinion, it's just not worth it. Any vocal EQ needs to be done. When you boost for vocals, so you got that normally is 4 to 6 kilohertz is the classic presence region. You'll push that, you're going to get a bit more of the vocals in most vocals. But say 5 to 8, classic 5 to 9 kilohertz is the sibilance. There's a fine line between boosting vocals but not boosting sibilance. In the real world, in high-end gear, where this is done, when the mixer does this, when he wants to boost for vocals, they use a filter, de-esser, which when that range of sibilance gets loud, dynamically it will reduce. That's how you EQ vocals. So again, I'm going to say, if it was down to me, it ain't down to me. None of this is down to me. In fact, I can't even get speakers from a lot of these companies. Nothing is down to me. I thank Bogasing for actually wanting to. I didn't ask for it. They sent it to me. But in my opinion, I wouldn't bother with the vocal. I would do something in between the 3D and the bass. The bass mode is, yes, you got more bass, but it's too highs, light, and we're in danger of getting too bright on 3D mode. Something in between that. Forget vocals. Just give us an in-between EQ. Those are the modes. Just want to know what it sounds like against the other usual suspects. We're going to start with, what we're going to start with? We're going to start with the Maxsound Plus. So what was already, I'm saying, on the bright side of neutral. People say it's neutral. It's on the bright side of neutral, especially when all these frequencies have to be balanced because of the lack of deep bass. Obviously, on all these, all that's got some deep bass. It's going to make it sound brighter anyway. It's about balance with these frequencies. It's not about just having a flat frequency response, as, again, self-acclaimed. All your files will look at a frequency response and just say, well, that's flat line. And it's the balance. You can do that with high-end gear. Why can you do that with the high-end gear? Because it plays down to 20 hertz, and they're probably using subwoofers and stuff like that. There's a complete balance. When you've got a complete balance, yes, go for a flat line or in-room response of a downward slope. You can't do that with these speakers. But anyway, I've been saying that from day one. Maybe one day someone will listen to me. But anyway, on the bright side of neutral, but you don't want it to be neutral because it would sound not very good because it doesn't have the balance in the bass. Those two compared. Always remember with these comparisons, this is a 360-degree speaker, whereas these are always going to sound best on axis, where the drivers are actually facing you. With this, you're going to get a consistent, you do get a consistent sound. No, in fact, I haven't got my phone, I've played it now, but you do get a take my word for it. Not a lot of people won't, but if you do, it's a consistent sound. Obviously, you're going to get a little bit of variance, but for some of these 360-degree speakers sound completely different no matter how you listen to it. This one sounds consistent. That is a plus, and that's why I point out you've got to remember that when we're comparing directly on axis versus on axis. Both are, I'm doing 3D mode, by the way, because that was the most consistent of all the 3D modes, of all the 3 modes that they have. I mean, I wouldn't listen to the other 2. You may flip-flop between them, but I think you'll end up mostly on, I got it on the wrong one there, but on the 3D mode. Both bright side of neutral. That is obviously what I've already said is the brighter sound. So all of these are, again, measured on the brighter side of the speaker. If I turned it around, it would be less bright sounding. We're talking bass light, but they don't do bass below 100 hertz. So we're talking the edge of mid bass that it goes down to. The bass is there. It's just going to be rolled off relative to the actual track. But it's going to be, when you've got a speaker like Maxsound Plus, which, you know, does lovely vocals, on the neutral, more on the neutral side, it's going to be at a disadvantage. But it's got more bass. I mean, that surprised me. So actually, I think this is a draw. I wasn't expecting that. I would say this is a draw at 50%. It's all about volume steps. I'm doing this where I think it's best to play these speakers. Certainly these two, 50% is a sweet spot. We already saw after 50%, it's going to be, that bass is really going to roll off relative. It's not, you will get more bass, but you get less bass than you get more mids and highs. 50% at its sweet spot. I think it's a draw. I've got more satisfying bass sound on the M5 compared to Maxsound Plus. I wasn't expecting that. So I'm saying that's a matter of taste. Versus what I already said was no secret, a bass heavy speaker. I like that. I like deep bass, not boomy bass, but a lot of people, see, I got accused, you don't know the difference between boom bass and deep bass. I would point it back to you. If you're saying that, you don't know the difference between deep bass and boom bass. However, Soundcore Boost, I do not work for Soundcore. In fact, I've been having a bit of backwards and forwards. They've been messing me, and apparently some other people. Call them out when they do, and I know it should be a Bogasing video. I'm just saying, because for years now, I've been accused of working for Soundcore, and trust me, they're a very frustrating company to try and get speakers from. However, Soundcore Anchor versus the Bogasing M5. Well, I love the Soundcore Boost. Now, I should point out, there are certain tracks, and more so at low volumes, where you'll get a bit of pumping, so the bass will go up, go down, go up, go down. I only get that on the specific tracks you told me to listen to. I have to tell you, if you'd never told me that, in the real world, I'd have no problem. Obviously, we're listening to different tracks. I have to point out, there is a problem with the Boost, at lower volumes mostly, where the bass will pump on certain tracks, not all tracks. For the tracks I listen to in the real world, it doesn't do it on any of them. I'm pointing that out. It's not a perfect speaker, but it is for me, for the size and price, simply unbeatable. Well, if there's a better one for bass, size, price, tell me. But that's my favourite because I love a deep bass. Yes, it's boosted. Don't make it boomy. Just get this right. Boosted bass does not equal boomy bass. It can do, but they are two different things. Maybe, by the way, your room. That's the problem. My room's treated. For me, it's clearly a more satisfying listen. On axis, this is consistent all around. If I'm not listening on axis, then I probably would have to consider that. But that's still a bright sounding speaker, and I prefer bass heavy speakers. I would say that's, for me, a win for the Boost, but it doesn't make this a non-starter. And you've got a reference point where we sit with the Bogasing M5. It doesn't do deep bass. That's like 20 hertz deeper. It will go before roll off, which is significant when we're talking, you know, below 100 hertz into the mid, getting towards deeper bass. Again, this will always suffer with that 5 kilohertz dip, but I've got on mine So against the middleman, always said it's in between these other two. And it's a very, very different design. And it's the only one here, by the way, that's got lights. And by the way, that's the only one here that's got an app. That was with my custom mode. And that's what sets that apart here. It's the only one with, not only that it's got a proper graphic equalizer. I've had this back and forth as well about JBL and all that. And well, it is a graphic. No, you don't know what a graphic is. It's EQ, but it's not a graphic equalizer. That's why I call it an algorithm-driven balancer. It will do different things at different volumes, not what you think you've set. It's got lights on the end of it. We're going to have a listen against the Bogasing M5. All four speakers playing the same track and loudness matched. Clearly see the bass of the Soundcore Boost is dominant. The M5 has the biggest extended high peak at the 10 kHz mark. Maxsound Plus weakest in the mid bass, but does have reasonably strong lower mids, which kind of makes up for that. And the Mifa Wildrod just behind the Boost in terms of dominating with bass. It also has the biggest roll off at the high end. So that's got a 3D mode, kind of, they say pseudo surround. Well, it's nothing. It's very subtle in what it does, but it is a 360, and it does do left and right, albeit I would have liked the opposite driver to be on the other side, but that's mono. And you can really hear the difference between mono and stereo on these two speakers in an AB. That's a big difference. This does bass, but not as much as the Boost, but you may say, well, it's not as boosted as the Boost. And by the way, there are clues in the name. It boosted, the Boost. But, so it's closer, for me, for my taste, than against the Boost. Now, I would say, you know, it is more a matter of taste, and I may pick up one over the other. At 50%, this is all about volume steps. This is a sweet spot for this speaker, I'm pointing out, before you get a big drop-off in that relative bass. And as we already saw, the volume steps, you won't get much more volume after, say, 55, 60% as you would the lower volumes. Difference in bass, but it's stronger in the lower mids. That's going to help a little bit. The spreader sound is more enjoyable. It's more immersive. Actually, with that Boost at the high end, even though it's got the dip, it sounds a little bit more trebly. And that's, so for me, again, another draw, taste. Bass, maybe a little bit, a nicer presentation, I would say. I mean, I would probably still pick up the Mifa because I can't really listen to music without a bass foundation. If you're listening late at night, and a lot of you sometimes only use these things for podcasts and stuff, then that will be the obvious choice, I would say. So that means I'm going to do the maximum volume. I'm not going to go to 75%. As I said, look, I'm going to tell you now, it's going to sound bass light and a bit screechy after 55, 60%. Just know that. But I think most of us will play this around 50%. But if you want to go balls out, maximum volume, this is what you'll get. Nothing's got away, rocks now dead, nothing left today. This thing, no one yesterday, we got to feel the truth. Now it's So maximum volume, the Mifa Wildrod is the loudest, by at least a decibel and a half over. Next up, the Maxsound Plus. Trailing behind a couple of decibels is the Soundcore Boost, and the Bogasing bringing up the rear. But of course, the Bogasing fires front and rear, and this is an on-axis measurement. It does hold on to a reasonable amount of bass compared to the others. But again, its frequency response is not going to be great because it does have that prominent 5 kHz dip, countered by their 10 kHz peak. Although Maxsound Plus does hold its own in terms of volume, it's doing that because, as you can see, it has the least amount of bass, save for a smidgen around the mid bass. And in fact, its peak is dominated by that 750 Hz peak. So it's the loudest on the table, the Mifa Wildrod. But again, it's a 360-degree speaker. Those measurements are on axis. If I was, and I did, if I measure the peaks, peaks is quite different from LUFS. I hope you, by the way, I put these things out. I hope you understand what LUFS are. It's relative to the track. So the steps are in decibels, but it's measured in LUFS. So 0 is actually as loud as you can go. It's measured across the whole track. So it is the measure of overall loudness, whereas peak is a measurement of it, basically, depending on how you do it. But let's say, for simplicity, it's instantaneous how loud. You could have it for 1 instant and then everything else be silent. And then people will compare peaks and think it goes loudest when it's only a certain frequency. If only one frequency was boosted 100 decibels, I know it's not going to happen. But just for this thought experiment, if you like, it would make it sound the loudest when it isn't. So really it's about both of those, in terms of LUFS. But in terms of decibel peaks, if I measure it on that track, across the track, for finding its biggest peak, on both sides, the Wildrod, it's still the loudest at 100 decibels, but all 3 of the others come around about 96.5 decibels. So if you actually measure what they're putting out from all sides, these 3 speakers are the same volume. But of course, if you're listening on axis from a front, that's suffering from one of the driver's face going the other way. And if you turn them around, it's a different result. It's not like you get no decibels on the other side. On these type of speakers, around a 4-ish decibel, let's say 3 to 6 decibel, 3 to 5 decibel drop when you go to the other side. So depending on how louder it went on axis, it may still be louder. These 3 speakers happen to be, for all intents and purposes, in terms of peaks, exactly the same when you measure them all round. And I think in the audiophile world, you'd call that spinorama data, or no, sound power. But in terms of loudness, unlistenable for me, Maxsound Plus and the Bogasing M5, because of how screechy they become, because of how much bass drops off. These are still listenable, and I did that, by the way, in default mode, because one in custom, one in default seemed fair. And anyway, it's normally best to switch these custom EQ ones back to default, because it's tuned for its maximum headroom that way. You normally get more bass than if you left it in custom where the filters are still kicking in a bit heavier. So that leaves us with the Bogasing M5. My overall thoughts were better than I was expecting. It is a contender. Now, it's going to depend on at the price. At the point that I'm reviewing these are all around in the UK 50 quid. It's a bit different in dollars. They range from $48 for the Maxsound Plus to $70 equivalent for the M5, but these change all the time. Let's say about the same, £60, $60. As long as it's priced that way, that's a contender. It's a contender for me, if you're not going into the louder volumes, then that becomes unlistenable. However, you can switch it to bass mode, where it makes more sense then because it's less screechy. Still not getting enough highs, but it isn't rather. I would rather switch to bass, say 65% and over, than keep it in 3D mode, because it's too screechy for me, unlistenable, to be honest. And the Maxsound Plus, unlistenable for me at maximum volumes, but it will go further into the higher volumes before I would say it's unlistenable. It's still a great classic speaker. I would recommend all of these speakers. Just know what your taste is. And like every day I get asked, what's the best speaker? I'm like, I can tell you, there is no best speaker. We all have different scenarios, different tastes, and what's your budget? What size do you want? And that's why I only do best value. I'm still getting people going on my best speaker 2023 without realising it's April the first video and complaining I never actually tell you what the best speaker was. I don't do that. I don't tell you what the best speaker is because nobody can do that. It's like telling you what's the best woman to marry. Nobody can tell you. It's ridiculous. It's different things to different people. But I can tell you the best value. One annoying thing was every time you turn the speaker off and turn it back on. In fact, not only that, when you stop playing your music, maybe switch to another speaker and then go back to this one, even if you haven't turned it off, you've just disconnected for a moment, it will reduce the volume again. It won't remember that last volume step. Well, personally, I find that annoying. I don't know if that's a bug or that's deliberate. Again, it's something I wouldn't want in a speaker, but all of us are different. Let's go over the actual specs. Well, where they're all made in? They're made in Switzerland, France, Germany. No, they're not. They're made in China. The prices fluctuate daily. Let's just say I'm reviewing, it's all about price, and I'm reviewing them around the £50 to $60 mark. If it's a lot more than that, then I don't think it's going to be worth the money. Battery. Now, I'm assuming 3.7 volts on the Bogasing because that was on the M5 because that was the M4. So I can get the actual capacity. That would be, because they only say 6,000 milliamps. Guys, no, milliamp hours tells you zero. Multiply that against the voltage if you want to know the battery capacity. Capacity, I think, is 22.2 watt hours, which actually is the biggest battery here. If I'm right in saying 3.7 volts, it may be less, but I'm assuming that. 16.3 watt hours for the Maxsound Plus is the smallest battery. 19.2 watt hours for Maxsound Plus. 19.2 for the Boost. And 18.5 for the Wildrod. So not a lot in it, but that actually on paper, if I'm right, is the biggest one. Of course, they're all SBC codec. It's got Bluetooth 5.3, the M5, as in the Wildrod. The other two are Bluetooth 5. It does do stereo pairing. The only one that doesn't do stereo pairing, unfortunately, is the mono Wildrod. Oh, that's a miss. That's a huge miss, actually, in a mono speaker. For the Wildrod, all got USB-Cs, they all do now. I mean, there was a time when, oh, wow, yes, it was like having auxiliary. It's got auxiliary, oh, yes, wow. Of course, they all have USB-C charging. Only the Maxsound Plus and the M5 have that auxiliary in. I'm just saying, yeah, nice. And those are the two that have got it. Only the Soundcore Boost can be used as a power bank. And only the Wildrod cannot be used to make phone calls. It is the Wildrod and the M5 that do that thing where we get the, you can play off an SD card, micro SD card, and of course we can also do that off a USB dongle with the M5. Only the Wildrod has those beautiful party lights. Watts is meaningless, but if you really want to know, they say 30 watts, at least they say RMS, so that could be accurate, and it does go the loudest. 20 watts for the Boost. 24 watts for the Maxsound Plus, and as I said, they say 40 watts, but that seems to be rated on the drivers because it goes about the same loudness. So this is my point. They say 40 watts. Is it charging? Well, that only charges at 1.5 amps, so that's the worst here. That's 7.5 watts, whereas the Bogasing M5 will charge at 10 watts, and the Wildrod will charge at 15 watts. But the Boost, I don't know what that would charge at. They're all about the same weight, but if you actually want to know, Bogasing is the lightest at 604 grams, the Maxsound Plus 610 grams, the Soundcore Boost 624 grams, the Wildrod 630, but remarkably well within the same range. They are all IPX7 rated, 1 minute of water for 30 minutes. But the Wildrod is also IP67, the 6 of course means dust proof. They will all float except for the Maxsound Plus. To me, it's just ridiculous. IPX7, but it doesn't float. It makes it, to me, kind of pointless, but I guess it would save you in an emergency. But the only one that will float and play with the drivers up, which is the point of having it float if you're actually just having fun in the pool, is the, well, I'm holding that because I don't know what I'm doing, is the Wildrod will float and will play with the drivers up. It's mono, so it's got a 45 by 80 millimeter woofer. It's got a, no it hasn't, it's got, yes it has. It's got a 20 millimeter tweeter. It's got 2 passive radiators on the sides. The Boost has 2 44 millimeter, and remember, I haven't taken that cover off, I'm going by their measurements, and they're never quite what, because there's many ways you can measure a drive up. They're saying 2 44 millimeter full range woofers, drivers, I should say, and 2 passive radiators. Got 2 45mm, they say, on the version 2 Maxsound Plus and 2 passive rads. And I measured the 2 40mm, so all about the same. 2 40mm full range drivers, 2 passive radiators, as we can see, front and back. So the only one with a tweeter is the Wildrod, but the only one with a titanium driver is the Soundcore Boost. In terms of that lag, of the 2 that have an auxiliary, it's got an auxiliary, but do you know what? I've got 160 milliseconds of lag, and that's huge. I know we're talking milliseconds, that's huge. That's unusable if you're trying to actually do something in sync. That's terrible. For me, my cutoff for like streaming, lip syncing is 80 milliseconds, 160 milliseconds for an auxiliary. It's awful. But you know what it is on the M5? 0. There is no latency. I measured 0 latency, and that's fantastic. That's a usable, very usable auxiliary input on the M5. But in terms of latency on YouTube, well, the only usable one for me was the M5. But still, my cutoff point, 80 milliseconds. I measured this in 90 milliseconds. You're going to see some lip sync, but it's usable. Whereas the others are, like, starting from 135 milliseconds are very, very poor. You can certainly get worse than those, but all the others are pretty bad for streaming on YouTube. And the only one with an app is the Soundcore Boost, and it's a very, very good app. It's a sort of a proper graphic equalizer, and it works very well and it completely transforms the value of these speakers. That's been my Bogasing M5 overview and review. They sent it to me for free, but they've had 0 input, and I've told them absolutely 0 about what's in the video, as I always do, even when some people send me the scripts. If you follow my Instagram, you'll know what I'm talking about. Some people, some companies send me guidelines and stuff like that. Of course, I completely ignore that. That's not what review's about. And if you do that, you should be saying so in your video. And I was shocked. I will say I was shocked. I won't name the speaker. Follow me on Instagram, you'll know what I'm talking about. Some of those reviews that I also, as well as you, that talk about as being one of the honest, is that the right thing? Honest reviewers followed the guidelines, their sort of guideline script for that speaker. That shocked me, some of the ones that were doing that. I will never do that, because I'm never, what's the point? It's not like I'm going to be a big channel or anything like that. Anyway, and I'm here to be a proper resource. I know a lot of people think I'm a waste of space, and that's fine. But another of you think I'm a good resource for me to be motivated to keep doing this. Remember, there's no money in it. It's cost all of us honest reviewers are pouring money into keeping the channel going. We make absolutely nothing. Oh, I've had a moment of moaning at the end of my video. That's not good. But on a positive note, got another contender. Is it the greatest speaker of all time? No. Just know its flaws and its strengths. And at this price level, it certainly offers something and is a genuine alternative to other speakers you may be getting. If you want a 360-degree speaker, that's clearly its strong point, and it does well. It's consistent sound all round. And it's not a terrible sounding speaker. It's quite decent from 50% and below. If you want something that's clear and bright, it's perfect. No. Am I perfect? No. You perfect? No. That's the world, isn't it? Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again.
What the was that?
Uranus!
You boom.
Idiot!
It comes from China.
My speaker's got deep bass, balanced mids, and a bright high.
Yes, mine sounds exactly the same.